you discard the chicken legs, and it usually goes to the poor and the hungry that will resort to chicken legs. So there is like a symbolic nature of her collecting the discarded and disgruntled and the poor and the needy, and feeding on those types of things. That's like a big one as far as the symbolic nature of that. She lives on a house that is supported by chicken legs, that is supported by the discarded.
Welcome to the Fictitious Dark, where we explore the line between the truth and the fictitious. I'm Rick, alongside with
Brandon.
And today is a subject I'm not sure why we're doing it, but they decided they wanted to do it, and it's the Baba Yaga. I don't think it really fits into kind of what we've been doing the last couple of weeks, but we're here. Let's just do it. I think the best point to get started with is just start with the description. Don't you guys think?
Yeah.
All right. So the Baba Yaga is John Wick's code name, and he is an assassin, and he was upset with these group of guys who ended up killing his dog over his car. And he was the Russian boogeyman to the what was the guys called, the higher table?
The high table.
The high table, yeah, you got it right.
Yes. And he's gone through like the past 4 movies trying to fight back against the high table, who wants to bring John Wick into the back into the fold of the underworld, but John Wick just fights back. I just never got the connotation with cryptids and fictitiousness and
Rick, did you rewatch for your research? Did you rewatch the John Wick movies? Is that what you did?
Yeah, because Baba Yaga, John Wick, that's his code name.
Yeah, no, Rick. We were talking about the folkloric mythological Baba Yaga, the one that he takes his name from, the old woman who doesn't use guns and isn't in the underworld. That one.
Well, shit. I'm gonna have to mute my mic, and you guys got it, I think. Just turn my camera off, and you guys are good, right?
I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Research, though, entirely wrong thing today. Totally unprepared. Yeah. I just now. I just now have a visual of like John Wick floating in the sky in like the cauldron type thing, with maybe it's on top of his car, and he's like,
I just want his car to be driving, and then the chicken legs pop out of the bottom, and he hops over another car.
Perfect.
And
that's what I want.
He's shooting his tracks away,
that
clear tracks.
That would be if John Wick merged with like the Fast and Furious franchise.
There you go. Well, at least he hasn't gone to space. So yeah, today we are going to be discussing the Slavic, Eastern European, Russian creation known as the Baba Yaga.
The Baba Yaga.
And while Rick did the most research out of all of us, which I do appreciate, it's completely useless. So we're gonna just start from scratch and describe what the Baba Yaga is. So basically, the Baba Yaga is the kind of what I would call the prime witch of the Slavic folklore. She seems to be this extremely powerful magic user who, the interesting thing, is not necessarily malevolent. She seems to have kind of a trickster attitude where, if you do wrong by her, she will absolutely destroy you, but she could assist you as long as you don't disrespect her, which I think is pretty interesting. So that's probably how the creators of John Wick kind of came to the idea of using the nickname of the Baba Yaga, because John Wick, he can, like, just murder you violently, or he can help you depending on uh, if you mess his stuff up. So
Yeah,
it,
that
it's
is the closest actual reason that I feel like is true. But then I've also seen people say, "Oh yeah, Baba Yaga is the Russian boogeyman." Like
yeah,
that's
it's not
the
true.
actual definition. It's like, but then I've seen things say that that's completely not true, and it's like,
No, no, it's totally not true. So, like, I actually did a bit of additional research. The thing that I can see that is the closest thing to the Russian boogeyman is actually called the Babai. So
oh,
close, but the Babai is this creature that has a bag and a cane and, like, hides outside windows and, like, makes noises, and if kid or will go under the bed, and if kids get up from their bed, then he gets them. It's a way so kids don't they go to sleep. They don't get up
does
and go around.
does he know gun fu?
I'm sure, I'm sure that he has to do that at some point. If you get some kids toting some magnums, he's gonna have to respond in kind. But the Baba Yaga is a boogeyman-ish figure, but is not
True.
what I would say is the Russian boogeyman. It's much different. She's more like uh, Hecate from other mythology. She's like a goddess of witchcraft almost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I read, she's kind of like almost like the transition of change. Whenever her victims go to see her, it's like at a point of where they're about to change something about themselves, or story is about to
Yeah.
change. In the Baba Yaga, there's like multiple different, like, ideas which a lot of people think that she stands for, and there's not just one Baba Yaga usually.
Mm.
There's not two, there's three, and they could usually be like sisters or daughters. It just depends on the different, like, folkloric adaptation that's been added throughout times.
Do you want to
So
know? Do you want to know what my theory on that is?
With that.
So there's two things. The first thing is that the character Medusa, right?
Hmm.
Well, she's not the only Gorgon. There's like three of them.
Yeah.
But people usually refer to Medusa as being the only Gorgon. So it kind of reminds me of that. And then the other thing is that I do wonder if that three Baba Yaga thing is a later writer attempting to rationalize the fact that the Baba Yaga behaves differently in different stories. So it's like a retcon to have them all kind of exist.
well,
Yeah.
so I guess just very quickly, if anyone doesn't know, the Baba Yaga is a witch from very old, like, Russian folklore and stuff. So, but just real quick, with how old the Russian folklore is that was created for the Baba Yaga and everything, do you guys know anything as far as dates and years? Because I didn't really see much as far as that goes. Because the thing that came to my mind with the whole, like, three Baba Yagas, three sister witches or whatever, is Hocus Pocus. Like, which one was created first? No, I'm joking. The
Well, obviously, Hocus Pocus came out before John Wick ran them.
Yeah.
oh yeah, duh.
There you go.
But no, way before that. So, like, the like Macbeth story, with, like, the three witches of, like, the prophecy and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
Where's our timeline? Which story
yeah.
was created first?
I thought I read something like I can't remember what page it was on. I'd have to shoot through them real fast.
It
What I
looks
read
like
through
the
was like
first.
1755 or something like that I
It
read.
looks like 1750s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the first reference, but we have to remember after we did the unbinding that the Slavic folklore was not recorded
Mm-hmm.
until much later. So the first written reference is in 1755. Macbeth, in fact, was written in 1606.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, you could even think that maybe the three Baba Yagas potentially comes from Macbeth even.
Okay.
maybe that was inspired by that, because I know in a lot of adaptations of Macbeth, or a lot of interpretations on the stage, sometimes it'll be three old women, but sometimes they will embody the three archetypes of women, right? You have the virgin, uh, the matron, and the hag. You know, it's the three levels. There's like but they're all united as this kind of force in the story. So perhaps that's also an aspect that's influencing this. Because again, Baba Yaga, I know there's been some stuff I've reading where she could almost be like a representation of the tumultuous of Mother Earth, of nature. It can be very comforting, but it can also be very terrifying. And that was also something that we touched on with Mokosh in the Unbinding review. These kind of goddesses, these deities, sort of, who if they're on your side, that's fantastic, because they're very powerful. But do not assume that you will have their assistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I know I've always heard a lot when it comes to the threes is usually it's like their way of mocking the Holy Trinity of Christianity.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it simply that, or is there something just about life of like things just work in threes? Is that just the way that our human brains are like, yeah, threes make sense,
Yeah.
So I feel like there's all sorts of maybe just psychological reasons behind it as to why people always put threes on things.
Sorry, maiden, mother, crone. Those are the three archetypes.
Okay.
In neo-pagan, it's the maiden, the mother, and the crone, and the female life cycle, and they're each a phase of the moon. Often rules one of the realms of heaven, earth, and the underworld. So that's probably and Hecate, like I mentioned earlier, is depicted as like a three-faced goddess of not just witchcraft, though, of liminal spaces, which is really interesting. Like I was doing some research on that, and Hecate is like the goddess of doorways. So like once you pass a threshold, it's kind of, and this is kind of tied into the whole vampire thing. Is like once you pass like the threshold of something, you've kind of broken through some sort of barrier that exists. There's cultures where you have to sanctify, or you in the cultures where you lift your bride and carry her over the threshold of the doorway. You have to carry her inside. She can't like step through. Just so interesting stuff like that. And so, there's been a few I won't say recent, but kind of common depictions of the Baba Yaga, and I was curious if you guys had seen them. So one of them, one of my fiance's favorite movies, Spirited Away. The witch in that is based on the Baba Yaga, and she has like a twin who is, a good version of her, essentially. That's kind of based on that. And then the other one, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but did you see the kind of unfortunate, but I think it was the 2018 Hellboy?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's in that too.
The one scene in that film that is actually really good, and unfortunately the only good scene in that whole movie
is the Baba Yaga.
Yeah. They did a great job. And everything about the way she looks, the way the house looks, what's going on in the house, just the atmosphere. They did a great job.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that scene.
Yeah, no, it's worth it. If anyone likes Hellboy or is curious and gets into the Hellboy movies and comics at some point, the rated R Hellboy that came out in 2018 or 19,
I forget.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. Don't bother watching
Hellboy.
It. Just look up Hellboy Baba Yaga scene, and you'll be satisfied. Maybe you could look up the Giants fight scene. That one's kind of entertaining, but it's not. Yeah. It's nothing crazy. But yeah, that don't waste your time on the rest of that. They did a really good job with that one scene of depicting the Baba Yaga, which let's go over the specificity the specific nature of the Baba Yaga and the story of the witch. So Baba Yaga, have you guys see it all as far as what those names or words mean separately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like most people will agree that Baba, Babu, Babushka, grandmother. A
Hmm.
lot of these Eastern cultures refer to that, and then it seems like nowadays it's a pejorative. You
Yeah.
call someone Baba if they're like a foolish old
Yeah.
filthy woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Baba being that, and then I saw a bunch of stuff with Yaga, having a couple different definitions, but the one I definitely like the most is horror. And so like the title of grandmother horror,
Hmm.
I think actually sounds like pretty spot on and a good way to phrase it. Um, Especially with just the fact of the way that the Baba Yaga is showcased in a lot of things of like you said, you can she's not necessarily always malicious, but it's she's on her own thing. Have if you want something from her and she can get something good in return, she'll be this kind of sweet old lady towards you and help you out. But if not, she might just grind up your bones and chop you up and all sorts of stuff. So,
Yeah.
so I think it's a
My-
very fitting name, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it like the whole general idea that I read first about the Baba Yaga reminds me of totally Hansel and Gretel. That's like
Mhm.
one of the big uh s- you know fairy tales that I remember that it immediately like hit the nose, It was with like, the you know children, visiting like the house, and then the witch trying to eat the children.
Mhm.
There's the little hut in the woods, and I read like that sometimes the Baba Yaga is trying to like, kind of bring the kids in so she can feed on them. And she's always stretched out over a stove as well when she's found.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part kind of confused me. So, like, she's stretched out over a stove.
So like
Like,
like
what
maybe
is.
always she's always like cooking something on the
She's always.
stove.
I think it means that she's always
Like, she's like.
cooking. She's
Yeah.
Yeah,
like, oh,
okay.
come in. I'm just fixing something up.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then you get too close, and she like
So it's,
chops your arm off and throws it in the pot or
Yeah.
something.
yeah, so it's almost like your classic depiction of the grandma's cookies, grandma's
Yeah.
Mhm.
baking and everything, except grandma's
Yeah.
cookies has your
Or even
eyeball
like
in it.
with the cauldron, stirring the cauldron when you're walking
Okay.
in.
Okay,
Mhm.
fair enough. But yeah, so then the other part of Baba Yaga is the fact that she flies around on what is it called again? Do you guys remember?
Oh,
Isn't it what you use to like
It's for
grind
grinding
up?
up herbs and like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, which is commonly associated with
It's a
Richcraft.
mortar and pestle.
Yep, I just found it at the same time as what I was looking at. Yeah, so typically it's just a small thing where you use it to grind up herbs. Lots used in medicine very commonly, but then also it's associated with witchcraft with all the different stuff that they might
Yeah.
do with it. But for some
Mhm.
reason she has a giant one that she flies in.
Cruises around.
Yeah,
think
which reminds me of course the broom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
the idea of like her having a big one is to be mobile, so she's almost like a mobile like a taco truck, so she can just serve up children at any point and grind them up. But then,
And then
yeah,
I was gonna say, and she usually carries like a broom with her to cover up her tracks.
yeah,
Yeah,
that part of it I
Dude.
really like.
that was one of the coolest aspects.
Yeah, because
And
it's like there's an
the
actual
other one-
reason. for the broom.
Yeah. And I read like that's where the whole idea that witches fly around on brooms came from, is because
Hmm.
in some of the folklores, instead of being a mortar and pestle, she's on a broom
Yeah,
and she flies around on the broom.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to a question of, uh, once again, the timeline. What's inspired by what? It
Hmm.
seems to me like a lot of modern witch stuff and witch depictions and all that jazz has been inspired from the Baba Yaga, unless
It seems
there's a
to.
further back description that, is your typical witch stuff that the Baba Yaga was inspired from,
Mhm.
which I could be mistaken. But from what I can tell, it feels like this is like a lot of inspiration has been taken from it.
I mean, it's very true. I know that definitely there's some inspiration to be had from Grendel's mother in Beowulf, because
Mm.
she was definitely a cannibalistic bog hag type entity who couldn't be killed by conventional
I
weapons.
thought she was Angelina Jolie and she was hot.
No, no, get that. Look, I love that movie, but that shit ain't right.
Wasn't
Uh,
she kind of a shapeshifter anyway? I mean, she still could have been a
hmm.
hag and she just made herself look like that.
Yeah, that you see her real face. As a tangent, you see her real face in the movie when she kind of goes over the water for a sec, but you never see that in the film.
We're talking about Beowulf, if anyone
Yes,
knows what
Beowulf. Yeah.
the animated but like
Yeah.
not your typical kind
Yes.
of animation movie. But
But yeah, the Baba Yaga is definitely a strong uh, inspiration. Um,
mhm.
one other thing I just wanted to reference because I was talking about the three earlier is I can't believe I forgot this, but in Greek mythology, the Fates are
Yeah.
three women who are spinning the thread and they can cut your thread. So I'm sure that inspired Macbeth and potentially that inspired that version of the Baba Yaga. Hard to
And
know.
Mhm.
then in 300, there's what, the three oracles too?
Yeah,
Was it? In
Yeah.
300 too, that kind of gave like your fate in a sense. They're stealing that idea
Yeah.
from mythology.
yeah,
And then there's the three-headed dragon stuff, and
Yeah.
then
uh huh,
I don't remember what, but I feel like several movies have probably done this as far as this, using witches specifically to convey the thing of speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil.
Mhm.
I
yes,
know I've seen something where there was witches where like one was eyes were sewn up and then lips sewn up and ears like chopped off and like sewn up.
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's just that three thing. Three's the magic number. I mean,
Yeah.
just storytelling itself, the three act structure. So it
And
just
Like,
fits.
and something else with the Baba Yaga is Magic the Gathering, the card game, has their own little Baba Yaga, but she's called Baba Lysaga.
Oh,
And
okay.
her little powers are she can if you sacrifice up to how many permanents in the
Three.
game? 3 permanents. If there are 3 different types of the permanents, each opponent loses 3 life. You
Yeah,
gain
Mm.
3 life,
uh-huh,
and you
yeah.
draw 3
Three
cards.
cards.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
They must have done their research then.
Yeah.
definitely. But going back on what Brandon was saying about, that she's kind of like a trickster, kind of takes different forms. There's like a small bit of research that this researcher was describing that I'd like to quote just to kind of like show that they were on that same path as well. The researcher describes Baba Yaga as one of the most memorable and distinctive figures in Eastern European folklore, and observes that she is enigmatic and often exhibits striking ambiguity. She characterizes the Baba Yaga as a many faceted figure capable of inspiring researchers to see her as a cloud, moon, death, winter, snake, bird, pelican, or earth goddess, totemic matriarchal ancestress, a female initiator, a phallic mother, or archetypal image.
Hmm.
And then below that, they were I didn't copy over so I can read what the paragraph was underneath that, but they likened her as a trickster to other cultures and other um gods and or cryptids. They likened her to the same as Loki from Norse mythology,
Hmm.
and to native culture, a skinwalker,
Oh,
because supposedly she can, in some stories, she can take forms, and she has uh, geese that she sends out for information, and it was kind of interesting
hmm.
that that almost like trickster skinwalker idea came back around.
Yeah, that is interesting. And also, like, who would want to use geese to go get info for
Geese
you?
are mean, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll bite you. They're nasty.
It's
And
true.
when I was reading about that, it kind of brought that image that you were saying, that like the old leader of the skinwalkers who
Hmm.
is the old medicine man, is an old person that practices like this magic that may be good or bad magic, but they're focusing a little bit more on the harmful stuff,
Hmm.
and could be Baba Yaga, another
Mm.
form.
Hmm.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, this is kind of there's this we've kind of touched on it here and there. There's the obviously there's the archetypes of things. There's these whether they're universal archetypes or psychological archetypes, whether those are one and the same, the Jungian aspect. And with any kind of witch, we've kind of talked about how the like werewolves represent this kind of primal violent rage, this thing that seeps out once a month. Vampires are parasites that will try to convert you to their corrupted form of life. And with witches and the Baba Yaga, it seems as if we're right now what's at play is this kind of idea of the literal but also figurative devouring mother figure,
Mm.
this kind of grandmother that will consume you, that this matriarch that controls the destinies of generations after her, just by her cunning and her willpower.
Yeah. Yeah, because a big part of Baba Yaga is that she eats children.
Hmm.
Um. So another question is that kind of what inspires a lot of witch stories as far as them eating children goes? Did that kind of come from Baba Yaga? Oh, I mean, realistically, I suppose the barbaric nature of humankind of our and our history, it's probably inspired by real life, unfortunately. But
But there's definitely a point in mythology where it was more the masculine cannibalism. Like
mhm,
I think of the story of Cronus in Greek mythology. He had a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him, so he just eats them all. You
yeah,
know, he eats them all, and then at a certain point, either it was a different cultural influence, a different realization, or a different story archetype. This feminine, this devouring feminine energy, this cannibalistic woman started to become a thing, and with yeah, it became this thing belief about witches.
yeah, um, yeah. So there's as far as cannibalism itself, it goes back quite a lot. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff where the Baba Yaga seems to be like the centerpiece of inspiration on what a modern witch is.
Hmm.
um, at least a modern fantasy witch
Yeah.
depiction.
Yeah.
A modern witch is probably more so I'm going to buy crystals and then think that it's going to help me get more tips at being a bikini barista.
Please, Brandon, write your essay where capitalism was an effort to take away female power in the magical world. It was all a psyop.
Yeah. It,
They want us buying Starbucks, not you know crushing up mortar for
Well,
the next
yeah,
film.
yeah, because like Starbucks, like if you actually get into coffee, Starbucks sucks.
Oh,
Like
it's
make
terrible.
your own coffee or literally any coffee stand. It's better, like the coffee beans and everything. So yes,
When we
grind up
eventually
your
talk
own coffee
about
beans.
sirens, eventually we're going to talk about that Starbucks logo, because I don't know about you, but once you realize what the logo is, it's very creepy.
It's weird. I definitely want to do a deep dive into it because it's just so strange.
Like, just if you look at her face, like, it looks demonic. It doesn't look
Yeah,
positive to me.
yeah,
I've never
exactly.
looked at a Starbucks logo before.
Yeah.
If you look really close, like, just stare at it, and so it's actually, not to go on a tangent, but this is kind of related, but it's literally like in the based on an image of a mermaid like lifting two fins to expose, her privates. So it's like
Yeah,
it's definitely
Or
like, what?
kind of looks like it's staring into your soul in a sense.
Yeah, it's like it's staring
or
with like
maybe
these
she's
pupilless
lifting
eyes.
her two fins so she can properly sit in the mortar to fly around like the Baba Yaga.
She's gonna hover on the water.
Yeah, just spreading
Um,
terrible coffee. And then that's the story you tell your children. You're like, you don't want terrible coffee, do you? You have to eat your Brussels sprouts. um,
That's crazy.
but yeah, so the Baba Yaga, there's a lot of stuff where um, the Baba Yaga is a really good example of that good blend of like it's so far back and everything of real question mark fiction question mark. Obviously there's a lot of like definitely fictitious stuff such as like that she lives in a house that has chicken legs and walks around. Big chicken legs, to be exact, big enough to support a house. I saw this one thing that was talking about potential reasons for the whole chicken leg thing. It's like, well, why chicken legs, you know? And it's like a what you call it. It symbolizes the fact of like, especially at the time, the rich would eat, you know, the chicken thighs, the chicken breast, the most of the chicken, but they would discard the chicken legs
Mm.
because that, you know, you can eat chicken legs, but you know, if you got a plethora, why eat the chicken legs? They're not very good, and also they don't have much protein, and there's not much of a reason to actually eat chicken legs. So you discard the chicken legs, and it usually goes to the poor and the hungry that will resort to chicken legs. So there is like a symbolic nature of her collecting the discarded and disgruntled and the
Mm.
poor and the needy and feeding on those types of things. So
Mm.
that's like a big one as far as the symbolic nature of that she lives on a house that is supported by chicken legs, that is supported by the discarded.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't read anything like that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I also don't
Like,
get that.
the only thing I read about the house is that the chicken leg things was it was like almost an exaggerated take that the hut was on stilts, in the swampland, and it kept the stilts off, or those stilts kept the house off of, the water and the ground. And that's the only thing I read. That's almost a cooler story than the stilt.
Yeah, I also saw a thing as far as like it in different variations, it being different things that supported the house, not just chicken legs, like horns, I think a specific animal, I don't remember what, and then I don't know, other parts of different animals, I think was the most thing. I don't remember what the other ones were, but yeah, so different variations with that stuff. And then definitely like, so that's a pretty fictitious part of it. Probably the other thing that is another like changes per story and is a big fictitious part is the size of her nose.
Yeah.
there's a lot of it, especially like the further back iterations. If she lays on the ground in her house, her nose is so long that it touches the ceiling. And that was like an explanation as far as like that she can smell children, she can smell
Hmm.
you. She identifies you by your smell.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different stories where her smell comes into play, like
Yeah.
recognizing that someone is a Russian or
Yeah.
something else, you know. So,
The Russian scent.
yep. So that one's a little interesting. I was seeing this thing that I wasn't 100% sure on exactly what they meant, but it does kind of coincide a little bit with the depiction that was in the Hellboy movie, that she lives like in a different realm. Did you guys read much about that, and can you shed any light on it?
I did not find anything like that.
Yeah. There's not a lot of materials I found that directly were uh, classic tales saying such things,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's it kind of has that air to it. Just this idea of, and we've discussed it before on the podcast, of the woods being um, almost another realm is accessible there, whether it's the Fae or some other things, is that you can kind of enter another reality when you're in the woods as opposed to on the road, or in a city, a town, or on the ocean. That there's not that you couldn't enter specific realms, but the woods is almost its own realm, and a lot of the depictions of the Baba Yaga, she's kind of moving through the trees, and she's kind of like she seems like she's floating. She's really tall. She's flying around. So most of what I found was discussing that as the woods being her realm, and she kind of will grab children who wander into the forest and take them to her house. That is, you can't find unless she wishes you to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that side of things of her kind of being like in a different realm or whatever, um, I find very interesting. Definitely like kind of cool. Especially like it's a fantastical variation of like a witch stuff that I think makes it more interesting than a lot of typical witch things. But I feel like it's also a little bit of whether it's symbolic or whatever, that like is this realm supposed to be like purgatory or something like
Mm.
that, and then the also the symbolic nature of the disgruntled and the discarded. uh is she cleaning up the scraps, and it's like this is the spirit world of the discarded that she reigns over, and like is like the little bottom feeder uh
It's interesting
having her
because I
way.
did I did see something that she is the one who follows death. The death takes a recently deceased soul, and she cleans up the scraps, or she
Mm.
takes some. She can take the scraps, or she kind of follows behind. And yeah, what is discarded, what is scavenged, she will take pieces, or she will take an essence of you that isn't your soul, or some aspect of you, or even all of you. She may take. She can kind of follows along. She seems to have a sense for who's going to die, or he is connected to or can see death
Mm.
himself, the Grim Reaper. So I did see some of that. So perhaps that's an element too. Is she's, yeah, the bottom feeder aspect, the Baba Yaga, as this person who similar to the Wendigo, someone who dwells on the outside of mankind and their domain, but will scavenge from the edge whenever they can. They will come and uh, and take what won't be missed.
Yeah, yeah, because it's almost like she's a like a spiritual jackal or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or coyote, uh you know
Yes.
uh coming to pick at what's left.
Uh-huh.
uh yeah, which actually I feel like, because the whole realm thing, that fits, Plus, I think that kind of fits in the Spirit Away cartoon, the depiction of that. I've seen that movie once. I don't remember 100% details, but because isn't that movie like a big allegory for like the spirit world or something like that? Do
Oh
you
yeah, yeah.
recall?
She goes to the Shinto, um, essentially the Shinto spirit realm, and Shinto is all about, the river has a spirit, everything has some sort of spirit or life essence to it, and she's kind of running the bathhouse where spirits go to be cleansed or
Hmm.
to because there's this big sequence where the river spirit has been polluted by garbage and bicycles, and people have left all the stuff in the river, so it goes to her bathhouse to like get the spiritual water to purge it of these things, and she kind of runs things and makes deals for people's contractual obligation and soul essentially, and she does all these things and she flies around.
Yeah. So in that, the Baba Yaga kind of runs the bathhouse, like she's in charge of
Hmm.
it. That's
Yeah,
right.
she's in charge of this establishment in the spirit realm.
Hmm. Okay.
All right, 1 second, guys. I gotta use the restroom real fast.
Oh, okay.
No, he's got to drop a big Yaga.
Yep.
He's gonna drop a Baba Yaga.
He's gonna drop one of those Baba Yaga. But yeah, but it is interesting because in the movie, the good twin, she is kind of more in a house in the woods. Her place is
That's
more
right.
traditionally like the legends of the Baba Yaga, where the good one is more isolated and on the fringe, and the bad one is kind of running this business in the spirit world, where she'll
Yeah.
try to take your. What she does is she takes your name. What she does is she'll take your name and then takes ownership of your name and then gives you a new name. But because she has your old name, she like owns you and can order you around and stuff.
That's right. Yeah. Hmm.
Which a huge thing in witchcraft is like if
It's
you know the
true.
true name of something, you can control it, or
Yeah.
influence it at least.
Yeah. That's interesting. And that's an interesting aspect because that's a lot of things with Christianity, with like exorcisms and stuff, is knowing
Hmm.
the demon's name or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but I've had the experience of hearing about certain things when it comes to exorcism type things where you don't need to do that. I know um that is a common thing where when it comes to actual like exorcists, the practice of being an exorcist, they have that opinion of knowing the demon's name helps you.
Hmm.
But then I've also seen things where it's like you don't want to know the demon's name because you don't even want there to be some kind of like back and forth. You just want to
In the name
exit
of
out.
Jesus Christ, I cast you out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Don't even take the time. So I wonder, is the influence of knowing the demon's name, was that influenced by witchcraft? Was that the origin of like that sort of knowing the name, and just how a lot of stories get influenced by different things. The Baba Yaga has influenced countless things when it comes to witch depictions. Is that a real life example of something that has influenced something else that wasn't originally meant to be that way?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Again, you and I know, and Rick knows as well, is that the cross pollination of cultures, of mythology, of folklore, it goes so deep. You can spend decades, your entire life studying just one culture, even one kind of mythic archetype, and you won't have reached the true origin points of it because it goes back so far. And who knows when these things cross pollinated again, like there's stuff with the Indo-European. The one that really gets me, you probably know about this one. The one that really gets me is the Chaos Kampf, the Chaos Serpent, and all these disparate religions that all have this legend of usually a sky-based deity destroying a serpent or some kind of
Mm-hmm.
monster that either lives in the ocean or underground. And it seems to be this kind of recurring myth that all these cultures have, and we can't know how far back that story came into existence because either the story originated at a common origin point, and when we all separated, uh, we took this legend with us and it was orally passed down, or perhaps this was just a subconscious thing of so the Baba Yaga, maybe the knowing of something's name. Once language, because we have to remember, is consciousness existed before language. The language is like a virus, and so maybe early on it was like a when you named something, it kind of gave you power over it. Like
Mm.
I named this, I named this, and so it gives me knowledge of it. It gives me control of it, which I think is a lot of what our common culture is now, as we're cataloging everything. Everything has to be named, everything has to be found and known, and
Yeah.
then we'll truly have control over Mother Nature, which is just nonsense.
Yeah, it's like I have to you have to diagnose everything and everything has to be
Mm-hmm.
labeled. I have
Yeah.
to know all these different uh tiny little pieces of the spectrum of my sexuality or my gender or whatever, and it's like just so caught up in the labeling of things, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not like just live your life, do what makes you happy. It's just so caught up on I want to label things, and like because I've noticed, I'm sure everyone's noticed the uptick of people talking about what mental illnesses they have, like, oh, I
Mm.
have ADHD, I have autism, I have this, there's so many different things where like it's become an issue of people self-diagnosing themselves with these certain things, or they get diagnosed and they make it their personality. um, and there's all that, like, hashtag relatable stuff of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, us ADD people, us ADHD people, and then it, they just get caught up in the labeling, caught up in the
Mm.
name, letting the name control them.
That's interesting. Yeah, so the Baba Yaga, I do agree, is that there are more probably more ancient things. There's definitely some stuff that goes at least as far back, if not farther back. But I think the grandmother conception of the witch, a lot of that nowadays has to be based around the Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think again, like Rick said earlier, for sure, I think the Baba Yaga is the most well-known Slavic mythological creation. At least, like maybe in the top three, it's the one that I know best. There's Koshai and then a few others, but that's up there. It's
Yeah. I wonder, do you think the Blair Witch is the Baba Yaga?
it essentially is. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it essentially is maybe the Baba Yaga. It's whether you want to say that this individual who lives on the outskirts and perhaps they're very wise, and for their wisdom they are persecuted, and then that drives them to have this rage to uh, take the children of those who of the societies that betrayed them. I think we can find many things that relate to that in terms of how certain individuals operate. If you want to really not to get too dark, but I think we've discussions I've had. I think with when I was coming back from one of the film shoots with Tyler and Dovlu, is that if you really want to like hurt God, you hurt children
Mm.
because they're the most innocent things. And so the witch, these creatures that prey on children are the scariest and most evil because they go after the most blameless. Not the children can't do terrible things, but they're the most innocent. You target the youth.
Well, yeah, especially as far as like whatever the age of the child, that is like they are the ultimate form of purity, pure innocence, and uh, anything as far as like if a child does do terrible things and whatnot, it is usually a product of their environment, their teachings around them, the influence that the people around them have. So
Hmm.
so yeah, it's they're the ultimate form of a pure blank slate, just almost like just you're kind of born with those like positive aspects of humanity, and then the negative aspects of man are almost, some of them are natural, like potentially like a temperament, stuff like that, but a lot of it is learned and influenced. So
Well, I mean, I
yeah.
think we would all agree is that over time, uh, the reason people talk about it so hard being an adult is that as an adult, really what I've kind of come to perceive it as is that as you grow up, it's just harder to not take on things that don't matter.
Mm,
You know, you're carrying these loads that you don't really need to. You know, and when you're
yeah.
younger, it's easier for you to just go like, who cares? You know, like I got all this time. Whereas now all you're thinking about is, oh, I have to pay for this. I have to pay for that. You know, it's just
Yeah.
this
We worry
thing.
about the stuff that, that we really can't do anything about or change. We
Mm-hmm.
worry about that stuff more than the stuff that we really can change or do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
yeah.
With the Baba
Yeah.
Yaga here. Well, go ahead and finish your thought
You
because I want to move on
can.
to.
Okay.
No, I was
Well.
going to move on to a whole different subject with the
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Baba.
So as far as just real quick, because one thing I just feel like this has to do with what we were just talking about, is there's a lot of stuff with the Baba Yaga that people are now trying to make arguments of, like, that she's not evil, type stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to water it down and stuff like that. And like, because I saw it was a thing, it was saying that, like, oh, maybe she wasn't even a witch because she doesn't exactly fit the definition of a witch, because she has other traits that a typical witch doesn't have. And it's like, but she still has plenty of witch traits.
Yeah.
And so it's like the cutification of the evil things that, like, I think this thing is kind of neat, therefore I have to justify it and make that thing
Mm.
a good thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
you just gotta accept that the story, like, is that she murders and eats children. That is her main thing. And then, a lot of things is like, oh no, they just added that, she's originally a good person and it was other people throwing that on her. It's like,
I think it's enough to just view it as, there are some stories where she is just a wise person
mm-hmm.
that assists you. I think it's enough to view it as she is neither good nor evil. She is nature, and nature can be a leopard at your throat, or it can be a drink of water on a hot day. It's everything that and also in between.
Yeah. As long as that drink of water isn't deliberately going out of its way to butcher children. We go to your thing, Rick.
All right. This is a question to both of you guys because out of all the research that I read, it seems like, the Baba Yaga is almost like the personification of feminism.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all like the feministic jobs that used to be, big in the days, the cooking, being slaving over the stove, the motor and pestle, where you're mixing up herbs or healing people, the motherly activities,
Mm-hmm.
what else? The broom, sweeping,
Right.
all these feministic traits. And, Baba Yaga has been, associated with being a earth mother, kind of like a earth goddess. And so my question to both of you is, we live in, a so-called patriarchal society.
Right.
And the Baba Yaga stands for feminism, in a sense. Are these patriarchal ideas attacking the feministic idea and making her out to be something being vilified, and make her seem worse than what she really is? Or am I looking too much into it?
Well, I think that's a solid question to bring up because with what I was
Yeah,
just saying,
yeah.
a lot of people are questioning this.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple ways you can view it. I'll try to be direct with my answering.
Yeah.
I think a way to view it is that she is the embodiment of someone turning these feministic traits that are good to do, right? So let's view it from the point of view of the people making the story.
Mm-hmm.
She's taking these feministic traits that are good to do, and she is using them for corrupt purposes, and therefore she is not fulfilling her role as a grandmotherly caring figure. You could view it like that. You could view it as a sign of respect, perhaps, that the way she is so dangerous is through. This would be the feminist reinterpretation of like nowadays. They would say, well, she does these classically feminine things, but that's the tools she uses to have power to do these things. So you could view it in a somewhat positive way, that you should fear just because they have these feminine things they do. They should be feared for having power. So that's kind of two lenses you could view it through. The third the third lens, it could be just like it's simple misogyny, I suppose. Just this old grandmother. Oh yeah, she's totally satisfied just cooking and cleaning. She must be up to no game.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is likely. Yeah.
Not having a partner because, you know, Baba Yaga never has a partner.
Yeah.
The sisters or the daughters.
Yeah.
And it like shows, if it's daughters, it shows that she has like, you know, the strong, you know, feminine traits that she doesn't need no other man. You know?
She consumes children that aren't hers. And, you know, I mean, I don't want to get too political, but Brandon kind of opened the floodgates. But if you do want to view this in a certain lens, you could say that she is like the embodiment of that. Again, like what you're saying, Rick, is she is the cat lady. She's the she's the woman who is all alone, but she is furious that she doesn't she can't get over the fact that she wants children. So she satisfies that by literally taking them and consuming them and corrupting them. And, you know, if you wanted to get really political about it.
Yeah. She's been exiled from, like, you know, out into the forest, out in the swamp, you know, where we don't want her, and she's ugly.
She's ugly and old, and doesn't have any children.
Like, classical, like, you know, traits that we find, you know, beautiful in a sense. You know, we got to make her disgusting and gross to never want to be like her.
In the story with the three Baba Yagas, however, there is one who is young and beautiful.
Yeah.
But again, I do think that comes from the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So that's a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
So I think first off, and it's not even necessarily a negative thing, it is just a natural thing. I think that a lot of that idea of like, was it these people doing that is projecting. We project our own thoughts and beliefs, feelings, and whatever onto everything. We can't help it. That's just what we do. And so if we like it, if we like the thing, we are going to project our politics, our whatever things we're going to justify the means and all that. So as far as but then at the same time, the idea of like kind of the feminist look at the Baba Yaga, and it's like, oh, it was the patriarchy that turned her into an ugly thing. At the same time, that itself is projecting. It could be the feminists projecting this narrative, but then at the same time, it would be the patriarchy the projecting the narrative, if that is the case. You know, if it is the case that it was men that were like, ooh, yeah, I'm gonna just throw ugly words at this thing that I don't like, well then that's literally projecting. So you have two cases of projecting. Yeah.
Because again, like if you go by the logic of you should fear this being, but it's not necessarily evil, then it's actually like positive. You could view it as positive, like it's portraying this
Mhm.
this power in this role as the caregiver, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't respect the power. You
Mhm.
know, it's something that I think, again, you don't have to view these things. Yeah, again, if again, like you were saying, we'll project and we'll see like our truth there. But I think kind of what
Mhm.
I like about this podcast and what we're doing now is we're trying to like view things through a variety of perceptions. Uh,
Mhm. No, yeah, exactly. And so as far as like I think like especially when it comes to projecting and trying to question on like was it the opposite
mhm,
of what we think. I think that comes from a perception of safety. You, as the person stating this and questioning this, are in a very safe environment.
mm,
And this thing is not a threat to you whatsoever. And nor do you necessarily have experience with these sorts of things that are potentially real and not safe. Um, Now, you can also say the same thing once again that it's men who just feared something and they're just speaking out of fear and putting that on there. But that is one thing that I think, as far as the cutification of evil things, that comes from a society that is safe.
mhm,
So I think America, a lot of these cutification of things does stem from America a lot of the time. I suppose maybe Japan as well, but
mhm.
at this point in time, that has kind of been the case because Japan has been protected by America after all the, we don't need to
Yeah.
go into the history lesson, but just the modern state of things, that we as a population, generally speaking, do not know uh, firsthand these great and terrible things. We don't. We haven't experienced that quite disgusting depravity of evil in your typical way that a lot of people just experienced back in the day by trying to survive,
Mhm.
because living was just naturally a lot harder. Therefore, consequences are just amplified. So everything is amplified when you're in more so survival situation. And so when you are in these environments of the very harsh and not forgiving wilderness, settling, doing all these typical things where like the Baba Yaga uh, preyed upon your village, and that kind of stuff, life is hard enough. And then you have this source of evil coming in and making it even worse. And I think the Baba Yaga is a good example of with what we just brought up earlier, the Skinwalker, the Navajo Skinwalker purge. There was all these people that, because the going got tough and life sucked, they chose a dark path that had roots in evil. And you, in order to get into onto the right track of being in line with this path that you chose, even if it's not real or not, they did real acts of evil and violence and murder, and they believed in it. And so I think that is probably in a realistic sense of where witches and the Baba Yaga and that kind of stuff is still more than just a story, more than just some fantastical boogeyman.
Well, because there's this concept. Obviously, like we as humans, we make mistakes. We're flawed. We fear things we don't understand. But we have had things throughout history of wise men and women, prophets, religious figures, the Buddha, etc. So we clearly don't just say, "Oh, if you're wise and you know certain things, you must be evil." Right? Clearly, like throughout history, we've had things where we've gone, "This person is wise. This person knows things about nature, about magic, about humanity. Maybe
Hmm.
philosophers. We should listen to them." So it's clearly not every time you have a woman who is wise and knows things that she's automatically evil. Clearly, we can have good medicine and bad medicine. We can be human and acknowledge that, like, just because someone is wise doesn't mean they're using their wisdom or I should say, wisdom would be not using knowledge for a negative reason.
Hmm.
But they may have knowledge, but that doesn't mean that inherently they're good. And
Yeah.
again, in our society, we do have this problem where, oh, because this person is intelligent, or because this scientific advancement is being made, it's not. It's good because we have knowledge, we're advancing or whatever, So
Hmm.
again, Bobby, you have to have this acknowledgement of the fact that someone with knowledge, someone who has knowledge of the esoteric, can be a threat to society, can be using them for negative self beneficial reasons. It's intellectually dishonest to say every witch that existed was a good person.
Hmm.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, if someone has a knowledge of magic, burn the witch. I'm just saying like we have to acknowledge that if power exists, if knowledge exists, even if it's natural knowledge, there are certain individuals who use it for their own gain. We have to acknowledge this. We
Yeah.
can't cutify it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's exactly what Uncle Ben says. With great power comes great responsibility.
And then he throws the torch down and burns the witch alive.
Yeah.
um no, yeah, exactly. And I think that it's a natural progression in life that we as humans just haven't figured out, as far as the whole generational thing
Mhm.
of this cycle of life. Because what is the saying? Bad times create
Strong
strong
men,
men. Strong men create good times. Good
good
times
times,
create
great weak
or
men.
weak men. Weak men create bad times. Bad times create strong men. And so it's
Yeah.
just this cycle. So then it's like, and the whole like weak men thing comes down to just the fact of you're just not experienced. Like
Mhm.
a lack of experience creates weak men is ultimately what it means.
Mhm.
And so that's where things are difficult, especially this time in America, where we have to be really smart and choose our battles and try to figure out where we can give ourselves those proper experience to strengthen our mind, soul, and body in the chosen path of us choosing to give ourselves that experience and not having it forced upon us, which is exactly what all of our ancestors have had. They have had the trials forced upon them. And so now
Mhm.
we kind of have to choose to put ourselves through trial to become a better person on the other side, because it is very easy that these days with the good times that we can choose to not put ourselves in front of the fire and instead sit on the computer and play video games all day every day. Not saying
Yeah.
video games are the thing, but that is a good example of,
Moderation. It's
yes,
Yeah.
moderation of
exactly.
things.
So it's just
It,
an example of I'm choosing to not partake, and I'm just going to be here in my safe circle because I have everything that I need.
Well, something interesting, real quick, Rick. I want to pass it over to you. But something
yeah.
interesting, you said something that really fascinated me. Is there that proverb of the good times, the weak men, the bad times, the strong men, the good times. You look at something like the Roaring Twenties. We thought it was the good times, but in actuality, we were on the precipice of the bad times. So the weak men will think that these are good times right before we enter bad times, and people have to be forged into strong men. You
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of just, being comfortable, is evil. You know,
Mm.
once you get into that safe zone, like Brandon was talking about, being comfortable, you know, you don't want to do anything else. You're happy and content. Your belly's full. You want to stay where you're at. Whereas, me and one of my other buddies always came with the idea of like, if you're scared to do something that you really, really want to do, it means that it's going to be something that's going to be very good for you. It's going to bring
Mhm.
lots of change, and it's going to be something that you've really wanted. You just have to get over that little hump of fear, in a sense. It's always kind of like the adage that I've lived by, my life by for the last couple of years, is because ever since I've seen that, where, oh, I don't want to, go meet these new people because what are they going to think about me?
Mhm.
I'm going to stay at home and, forget about it. Maybe I'll do it, next time, if there's a next time. But
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to put yourself out there and, leave your mind at the door and just let things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
It's not courageous to do something that's easy.
exactly. And, a lot of us that, want to do these, have these careers or do this research, or, go take these photos at wartime, we want to do these things, and, we just got to put our feet out there.
Chicken feet out there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Our chicken out there, and, just push, ahead, and, and try to get away from like the spell of being, content with what's happening with your life, because the whole image of Instagram and Facebook is we're looking into these other people's lives, and we see all this stuff that they're doing, and, what they have and what they are accomplishing, and we just see, the end goal, but we never see the fruits of the labor that, that they go through in the trials and tribulations of, failing. But also, we don't know exactly what's going on in the other person's life. They may be posting just the good times, like you say, and there's really bad times ahead. Whereas, we're trying to do something, and we're thinking, how does everything happen for that person so easy? So
Yeah.
In the Japanese, they, to them, a river is a very pure thing. It's always moving. It's never still. The filth starts to accrue when you have stagnant water.
Yeah.
Stagnant water, and we are creatures mostly made of water. We have blood that flows.
Mhm.
If we're not moving, if we're staying in one place too long, we stagnate. Our muscles
Yep.
lose their power. So it's a sense, we're like a river, and so we need to let ourselves flow and go and do new things. And
Yeah.
That actually is very interesting, because yes, that's staying stagnant just physically is terrible for you. You
Yeah.
will die. Like,
Definitely.
you'll wither away, your muscles will atrophy, you will die. Literally, if you stay put, that means you're not bathing yourself. All sorts
No.
of bacteria and bad things will grow and happen from there. Even with a river, if the river is like, a
Restricted.
stagnant body of water, grows all sorts of different mildew and different gross
it's like the gnats
things.
that we walked by, Brandon,
Yeah.
when we were on the trail. Just like the hundreds of gnats just right over that pond,
Yeah, just it just grows all this filth, and so make sure to not just sit behind your computer screen and jump in a river, because it's moving and it's good for you, and it'll clean the stagnant filth. And so yeah, it's a very like, yeah, it is as much of a physical lesson as it is a spiritual lesson and a mental lesson, that don't be scared and do stuff. But that's the thing. As to the thing is, though, is like, it makes sense. It makes sense that when you get in these safe predicaments, these good times, that you do question the past and question these things of like, is that really dangerous? So that's why you do want to pay attention to your history, because if
Yeah.
it gets too far like disconnected from where you are now, then it really does become a thing of folklore and myth and legend, and it's not a fact that maybe once upon a time it was. And then you disconnect yourself so far from the whatever the thing was, that as far as the passing of knowledge through generations and everything, that it's almost like a lifeline, a connection that is through to your ancestors. And if you don't have that, well, then their word means nothing to you. That's just some stranger that said the Baba Yaga will eat you. And so I'm going to question. I think that was just a grumpy old man, and he was putting his own misogynistic beliefs on the Baba Yaga, and the Baba Yaga might be my friend, and then all of a sudden the Baba Yaga eats you. You know.
Yeah.
So,
They're gonna feed you and eat you.
Hollywood is very progressive. Nothing bad ever happens there.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The Nickelodeon Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
with all that said, in this circle of life talk, to bring it to an end, where do you guys think we are in this circle? Do you think we're getting towards the easy times? Do you think we're at the part where, it's creating the easy times? Or are we towards the end of the easy times that
I
lead into the
think
bad
that
times?
we're currently creating strong men. So it's I don't think it's gonna be very good.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I don't view this as pessimistic, but if I was to be realistic, history has had moments where things got much worse. Like I'm only saying in terms of this country, because other countries have obviously had really horrible things happen, and we had the world wars, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we look at World War II, we had prosperity for our country specifically. We became the top dog from that conflict, where we had very strong men who overcame these things. And again, I'm not saying everything was good. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that very clearly these were tough guys. You have to be to go through war. And so we entered a time of prosperity. And the Great Depression, we had that. But since then, I don't think we've had anything nearly as bad as any of that. And there's been worse times before. The Civil War, the Roman Empire. You could go on and on. Fall of civilization type stuff.
Yeah.
And you look at the lifetime of civilizations, and the U.S. is very young.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't surpassed a lot of these empires. And you could argue technology will allow us to, but I personally believe that we are in a state where I do believe that we're, like Brandon said, we're creating strong men, which that's great, but that is an indicator that we need them because hard times will come. We've already seen it, how hard it is to get a place to live,
Mm-hmm.
For yourself and your family. It's so I believe we're at that point in the cycle. We're probably entering the beginning of hard times.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't know because we're in the moment. We can't know till hundreds of years.
Until we're dead.
Until
We'll
we're
know
dead.
when we're dead. Yeah.
We won't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll know when we're about to die. When we're old men, we'll all know, like, okay, I feel like I helped get my family through the hard times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you think the strong men in each of these different generations were men, or women, I should say, as well, because women help out just as much as men in some of these aspects.
And a lot of the time when I say men, unless
That's
I'm
me,
very specifically saying, I'm saying humanity, human, so yes, I definitely include women in that.
You need the partnership of I don't want to get all like traditionalist, but I think when you have a strong man and a strong woman united, and raising a quality family, that's one of the most powerful forces there is. Women are just as important. It's just that depending on the nature of the struggle,
That's exactly where I was going next.
You know, I would say that I'm not. Yeah, again, the hard men thing is just like,
Yeah, it's just the plural of humans,
hard
Mhm.
humans.
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
yeah.
where I was going with that idea was that, do you think the strong men idea changes throughout history? Like there's like a new idea or set of like, new things that us as humanity have to learn to overcome the weak times or the bad times that are coming ahead to move forward. We almost have to like learn a new skill together.
Yeah. Well, so I think to a degree, so I think there's that overall humanity, you know?
Yeah.
There's whatever it is that we're eventually gonna get to. Um, the good of what humanity can achieve, the bar where it's at. I think that we slowly inch towards it after each cycle
Hmm.
because we do learn things uh, of morality and different good things of just humanity and culture and all that. Because, like, a lot of people, they, the hot topics these days is like wokeism and people
Hmm.
being like, oh, you're woke, blah, blah, blah. Which, like, yeah, there's like a lot of negativity all around. But even in that negativity, there's lessons that we learn through it because people are questioning it, even if their questions are dumb, even if a
Yeah.
lot
Right.
of the things are just like, are you serious? It is forcing everyone to question the thing, you know?
Hmm.
And so there is
Yeah.
progress, actual good progress that we as humankind uh that we do make progress in a good way because of the stupid stuff we go through, because of the bad times, you know.
I think
Sure.
that's an important point. Is that again, when we're talking about that kind of thing, the people who are asking questions, even if the questions are dumb, it's the people who try to go, well, let's not talk about that, or who cares. I mean, not that I'm saying like you have to be open to any conversation that's presented to you, but it's the
Yeah.
people who want to be ignorant, who don't want
I
to
th-
have these discussions.
I
They're the
th-
ones truly causing the most
I
harm.
think ultimately what it comes down to because people other people asking such dumb questions that you get to a point of analyzation that you really understand your beliefs. You
Yeah,
understand yourself so much that if nobody ever asked the stupid question, then you wouldn't. Even if you already knew the answer per se, you wouldn't know all the nitty gritty parts of the answer of yourself and how you feel about it. Because it's one thing understanding like, oh yeah, that's morally wrong or morally right. So yeah, that should be the thing. But that's such a blanket statement. How do you feel about it though? And how you
mm,
ultimately feel about it, and if more people feel the same way you do, well, then that will gradually shift the actual culture because people will start to shift that way, even if they're not saying it. And then eventually they'll start saying it. And so it's that same type of thought process of where people with bad intentions want to influence the culture and they'll try to get people to start feeling a certain way and get and have that spread and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think because it will strengthen you, it will have you more set in your beliefs. Um, and then the cycle just kind of helps strip away and rebuild from these like evolved seeds of humanity up to the next cycle. And so then it like there is a natural progression that happens each time. It's not like we're going back to scratch every time. We are
we're a stone
moving.
in the in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
The ripples may be small, but they eventually reach outward, and the more stones that are sending ripples out, every action you do does have ripples, and you can never perceive them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you don't believe in fate or spirituality or a higher power or an afterlife, any of that. Your actions do have consequences, and we know this to be true. We know that long term, on a macro scale, everything we do affects everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary, but there's a responsibility, and a positive thing to be gained from that.
So is Uncle Ben like flying around in his little mortar and he's
I
Yep.
like it.
That's why he had to go away.
Yeah.
You're
go.
changing. I went through the same thing when I was young. All right.
So the Baba Yaga is a good example of questioning your morality and understanding the fine line of what's right and wrong, and the corruption that takes place in these types of things, because the Baba Yaga is literally like, there's the happy grandma, good, all positive, and then there's the exact opposite of that, where she uses those tools to do terrible things. So yeah, I don't know. The Baba Yaga is a pretty good example of literally your classic boogeyman story, of you tell your children to blah 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 and whatnot. And throughout history, there has probably been things like the Baba Yaga, maybe not so fantastical.
John Wick.
Yes, specifically John Wick, Keanu Reeves. So what we really should do is just ask Keanu Reeves on what we need to do as humans.
I'm sure that he like spent months in Russia just researching the Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
Maybe
in between doing his shootout courses.
Well, especially considering that all they really do is use the Baba Yaga in name. I don't know if he did any research. But yeah, so that is just one little thing I want to touch on before we close, is the fact of the Baba Yaga's corruption of all things good, of the sweet tender nature, like, because like with what we touched on earlier, the purest form of innocence and purity is children. And so therefore you're going to doing harm to children is the most specifically purest form of evil,
and doing so from a position of family or maternal, paternal, these kind of roles is the ultimate evil. Obviously, like when you're a stranger, but unfortunately, I don't want to bring these figures to, don't want to go too much into it, but we know from our figures that most cases of certain types of assault on children are not by strangers; they're by familiar people. So yeah, like you're saying, Brandon, the ultimate evil is to lure someone in with these accoutrements, these images, these feelings of a safe place, and then turning and making it monstrous.
Yeah, and then it's because like almost like the ultimate form of like a pure relationship is a child and their grandmother.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So because it's like there's the grandmother is like almost like always just only love, like the parents are the ones that need to be doing the disciplining. So there's moments where the parents are the quote unquote bad guys for the child's perspective. But grandma is just love. Grandma will make sure you're fed and warm and will take care of you at all costs. You know that grandma will be there. And so when grandma is corrupted and perverts that relationship, I can't think of anything that's more evil than that.
Right. Right.
So
And it, when you were talking about that, it just, you know, gave me a thought. You know, the whole idea of, you know, you talk about children, Baba Yaga eating children. You know, the Baba Yaga, you know, could be a stand-in for evil, right? Where
Hmm.
children could be purity or just children. You know, consuming them almost reminds me of the story going back to the witch. You know, it kind of corrupt the consuming is corruption of the youth. You know, in bringing them into that lifestyle and that, you know, uh, corruption of witches that, you know, grows their numbers and bigger. And
It's absorbing their life force.
exactly,
The elderly feeding on the youth absorbs their life force. They refuse to die and pass on their knowledge. They wish to endure.
that as well, but also just almost transforming their evil onto the youth, and you know,
Yeah.
having them join their ranks into, you know, consuming more and more and more, and the evil keeps growing.
The three Baba Yagas.
Exactly.
Maybe
And so,
maybe the younger ones are newer Baba Yagas.
yeah, definitely, because I could totally see this as like like a almost like a, was it like a, what are they called, like a fair, not fairy tales, but like a old tale
Old
to give
wives'
you
tale.
warning. Yeah, old tale to give you warning about, you know, what's lurking out there that's, you know, gross and evil, and, you know, not to get too comfortable around things that you don't know because it might, you know, consume you.
Hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
drugs, you know, knowledge in a sense,
Do
other
not
things.
be fooled by appearances.
Exactly.
I think is at the heart of the paranoia about the witch characters. Yeah, because sometimes they're ugly, but again, the Hansel and Gretel story, which you touched on earlier, um, the heart of that story, the horror, is this wonderful appearing place that hides
Mhm.
a dark secret at its core.
Yeah.
And that's where the real horror comes in, is because you can't always trust what your eyes tell you.
Yeah, definitely a perfect stranger danger story. That's for sure.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
should definitely have like an episode specifically about that.
Stranger danger.
No, about Hansel and Gretel.
The PSA episode. Let's go
Well,
through a
we
list
could,
of everything that makes us think about why strangers are danger.
yeah.
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 So, um, to finish up on one idea I had on the Baba Yaga as well, that I don't know if you guys touched up on it when I disappeared for a second, or if we did earlier. But the whole idea that the, you know, the whole Slavic culture and, you know, folklore and everything has been, you know, almost passed on through word,
Hmm.
and it goes through that, you know, that fun game of telephone that we always talk about, you know, that cryptids and other folklores go through. And um around, you know, that Russian Slavic area, there's a whole bunch of different cultures that are around that. Do you think that maybe a lot of these Baba Yaga different interpretations are, you know, almost absorbed from different cultures and taken from different cultures to kind of like explain what they couldn't like remember or fill in when they were trying to, you know, put together the whole folklore of Slavic knowledge that they were trying to find? Because like I read that the Baba Yaga is also could be the goddess of death, and
Yeah.
is the Slavic version of Persephone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost entirely true, is that in this process of the oral tradition, if cultures get uprooted, if they mix and match,
Hmm.
even we don't even know specifically the definite form of Yaga. Like we don't
Yeah,
even know. So
yeah,
like if the name of something we don't even have a handle on what it means, perhaps Yaga means grandmother death.
yeah.
You know, maybe she
Yeah.
is like the Grim Reaper, but as the form of this old woman, this crone who comes for you, to
Hmm.
take you away when it's time. So I certainly believe that some cross pollination, perhaps they combined certain things, certain tales were mixed together, where you have a few stories of her acting in that role of like, oh, if you misbehave, like you'll die essentially, and you'll get taken by the Baba Yaga. But I do think that's possible. She was probably originally like Hecate or Persephone. This embodiment of this feminine death related thing. And she became more akin to a boogeyman and less of a deity.
Yeah, I mean this is a perfect example of the cross pollination. And I was literally just talking to Josiah about this because I had a conversation recently with my brother who read the Dune books, and there's all these different Dune stuff coming out these days, Dune 1 and 2, and they announced a TV series, and they're planning on Dune 3. And so specifically with the Dune franchise, there was the original author, and the big thing of Dune that I'm sure a lot of people know by now is Dune was the inspiration for Star Wars. So it was like the OG Star Wars pretty much. And so then Star Wars took a lot of ideas of Dune, and then George Lucas did his own thing and whatnot, and it became its own thing. But you can definitely see similarities between the franchises and everything. But so then you have this run of books by the original author, and these books inspire Star Wars. So then there's the Dune books, and then there's the Star Wars books. And then the original author's son grows up with both the Dune books and the Star Wars books. Obviously, he has closer roots to the Dune books because that's his father, but he pretty much had a very, at the same time, the knowledge that came to him in the form of these fictional creations were kind of simultaneous almost. So for him, one didn't really come before the other. I'm sure probably the Dune books he was exposed to first, I'd imagine. But as far as growing up and getting older and everything, both were very, if anything, Star Wars may have been even more culturally relevant. So then he started writing and continuing the series of the Dune books after his father passed away. And so now he's creating these Dune books and continuing it, but his inspiration is almost more Star Wars than it is Dune. So now the Star Wars that was created with the inspiration of Dune is now going back and creating new Dune stuff. So then there's stuff that the son of the author created that is more like Star Wars, Jedi, space wizards, that kind of stuff is more relevant in the newer Dune books than it was in the older Dune books, and kind of different as far as the whole space wizard thing. And so then it's wait, that's more like Star Wars. And so then therefore it's I don't know, for a lot of people, it's more lame. But so it's just this.
I refuse to comment.
Yeah.
I'll get to that one day.
This is Josiah, who has actually read these books. I don't know if you've read them all, but
not the last 6 they pumped out.
Yeah. So it's just this that was the thing. So maybe, I mean, I don't know. Just for example, I could be dumb with saying this, but the Baba Yaga is the original thing. Let's say that. And then there's the culturally relevant idea of witches. And then because these new ideas of witches all of a sudden cross-pollinate back into the Baba Yaga, and so then the Baba Yaga's new lore and everything, all these different variations, all of a sudden the new ideas of Baba Yaga become the more mainstream line stuff. And so now us being these generations and generations and generations later, hearing about the Baba Yaga and researching, we don't have a linear actual path of time with the information. We just have it all at once. We can have the dates posted on certain things, but with Baba Yaga, not so much. So we just kind of have all this information all at once, and we don't know what came first. So it's kind of
And
like all even.
you know, it's like in Greek myths, there's variations of certain stories, and certain gods did different things, or occasionally different gods interacted with people in variations of the same story. And a lot of times we can't really tell what the first one was and what was a retelling, what was a quote
Mhm.
unquote remake. These are things that we're probably never going to know. We have an idea based on some surrounding factors, like the Iliad being a thing, and we can kind of date that. But yeah, it's one of those things where some of the fascinating aspects of this is that they were not we're yeah, like Brandon's saying, we get it all at once. Here's all this information. You sort for yourself what is the true canonical thing. That's
Mhm.
kind of the case we're in with fiction now, where there's all these reboots because something gets run into the ground, so the canon has to be reformed into something that will now be more palatable. Oh, the old Baba Yaga stories aren't doing it for you, where she's just kind of the Grim Reaper. Well, now she has a house with chicken legs that walks around.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not demeaning that, because I think that's a totally amazing concept. It's wonderful. But again, we can't know these things. Perhaps the chicken legs was the original idea, and then they decided maybe she should just fly around.
Yeah.
But because the stories get mixed, certain people prefer certain aspects. It's,
Well,
it's this idea.
one thing as well is whatever you were exposed to first will affect your perception on that thing forever. Um, like for example, the Hunger Games series. I saw the first Hunger Games movie, and then I read all the books, and then I saw the
Yeah.
rest of the Hunger Games movies. So from that point in time, all the characters in my mind were the actors from the first movie. So Katniss was Jennifer Lawrence, Peeta was Josh Hutcherson, and so for like Dune, I haven't read the Dune books. I saw the first Dune movie and those older Dune movies that aren't very accurate. So there's the different actors and whatnot. So it's almost like if I were to go back and watch and read the Dune books, in my mind, would Paul Atreides look like Timothy Chalamet, or would he look like whatever the other actor's name is? Yeah.
McLaughlin.
Yeah. So, and
It's
then it comes down to just preference at that point.
Kyle. It'll be Kyle in my mind
Yeah.
yeah.
because I've only seen.
Oh, I'm gonna go with Alec Newman from the miniseries. Anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
ultimately, it's one of the coolest things. We ran into this with the Unbinding. We ran into it here. Is the Slavic mythology is extremely mysterious. It bodes a lot of questions and leads us down a lot of rabbit trails. But ultimately, like all folklore, all stories, not all stories, but the ones that last, we have these very deep themes with which to explore our own culture, our own psychology, our own existence as human beings. Ever since we've developed this thing called language.
It's almost like all these stories were just people trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And teach lessons. Yeah. If you like the Baba Yaga, I know there's all sorts of different movies and stuff that involve the Baba Yaga.
John Wick. Sorry, my bad.
Look up the Hellboy Baba Yaga scene. Yeah. It's probably like 5 or 10 minutes maybe. If you do really like the Baba Yaga, then you'll probably like the Blair Witch franchise, or maybe just the single movie. And if you really like the Blair Witch, then you'll probably love Baba Yaga stuff. So definitely look into Baba Yaga stuff if you like the Blair Witch. So do some cross-pollinating.
There's like a 2020 Hansel and Gretel story that was pretty good as well.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing the trailer for
that.
Really...
That one was Gretel and Hansel, or we're talking about a different one?
I think it was Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah,
That was the one that like seemed like an A24 movie, but I don't think it was.
Yeah, it's by the
it was
same
definitely
director
that
that's
style.
doing Long Legs right now. So it's
Oh,
he has a
Yeah.
very slow, methodical style on the way he tells stories, and that's the way they went with the story, and it was great. I really like it. I think
I really
it's his
liked it
best
too.
right now.
I'll have
Yeah,
to check it out.
it was
But
solid.
it kind of takes the Baba Yaga story and does something a little different with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I won't look up anything.
I think in that movie they like to signify the corruption and the physical form of of their fingers starting to get black, if I recall that correctly.
I think so.
Yeah, I just thought that was like really cool. That was one of the things that stood out to me in the movie.
Yeah, and like towards the end where stuff starts happening, it takes a different turn on the story.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
It's very cool, and it's probably the one movie by Osgood Perkins that makes me so excited for Long Legs.
yeah.
We should review Long Legs.
Oh, for sure. Is
Should.
there an actual date on it?
I think it's June,
Oh,
Okay.
if I remember.
that's just around the corner. Cool.
If we're still alive.
Well, so the Baba Yaga, love it or hate it, you gotta love saying it. Baba Yaga.
Baba Yaga.
Alrighty. Well, do you guys have much more? I don't have anything new to say about the Baba Yaga. I find the Baba Yaga very interesting. If anything, there's all sorts of different little stories with the Baba Yaga. That I don't know. Maybe we can get into a future video. Maybe reading one of those Baba Yaga stories or something like that.
That'd just perfect if we read creepypastas and then we're like, here, let me read you this storybook Russian folklore I got here.
But I think the one last thing I wanted to say, I don't remember if I said this or not, but like a lot of the traditional like Disney and grim fairy tale witches, pretty much the Baba Yagas.
Mm-hmm.
They're their take on the Baba Yaga.
Uh-huh.
Do you have anything else to say, Mister?
All I have to say is thank you so much for joining me on this Baba Yaga episode of the Fictitious Dark. Please like, comment for engagement, subscribe. Let us know if you want us to cover anything else. A cryptid. You know, if you want us to cover a cryptid, read a creepypasta, explore a concept like, I don't know, the Bermuda Triangle or something. We're pretty throwing pretty wide nets here on the podcast, and we'd really appreciate any perspective you guys have, because we like to go deep here. But until then, please join us on our next episode, and sleep well out there.
Baba Yaga.
The Baba Yaga.
Yaga.